Hey guys, we're going to go over Barbie, is she safe? So we went through here and we noticed how some things change with R as we add or subtract dots. So when we added this dot to the right, it essentially made R go up. When we added the dot to the bottom, the 6, 6, it made R go down. It weakened R. So we came to these conclusions, and here's where the notes. One class had time to take notes, one didn't. But the notes are saying, how would we interpret R? So R in our lesson tells us how strong the relationship is, and essentially how close the dots, mathematically, how close the dots are to the line of best fit. We know the direction is either positive or negative. R just automatically assumes that it's linear. It doesn't know otherwise. So we use ly words. So we might say it's strongly negative if it's very close to -1. We would say it's strongly positive if it's close to +1. We would say that there would be a weak correlation if it's close to 0. And right around the 5 range, we would use terms like moderate, moderately strong. Okay? Now, what did we observe in the activity? We noticed that any unusual values that happen to be in the pattern, like the number off to the right, that actually strengthens R. We saw R go up from 0.992 to 0.998. What happens when we have unusual values that are not in the pattern? That ended up weakening R. R went down. We took one of the numbers out. It actually went all the way down to like 0.4. So it was significantly weaker. It got much closer to 0. We noticed that when we converted from inches to centimeters, R didn't change at all. It stayed 0.992. And so we must come to the conclusion that apparently changing units is not going, for either X or Y, would not change R because it doesn't have any units. Okay, so those are some things we know about R. And then in general, we remember from other classes that just because we say there's a relationship here or a correlation between the two variables, that does not necessarily mean a causation. So that's something that's going to be continuing to be important, and we mentioned it in class. Okay, so as you looked at these, hopefully you made dots, right? Or the dots were already graphed, maybe, I'm not sure, but it says, write the correlation between city fuel economy and highway fuel economy for these 10 vehicles would be R917. Interpret what R917 means. So we notice from our dots that there is a fairly strong, positive, linear relationship here between city fuel and highway fuel economy. So notice I plugged in the strength, direction, and form. I also plugged in the X and the Y labels, city fuel and highway fuel. Okay, now what would happen if instead of fuel economy in feet per gallon, we changed it to miles per gallon? Of course, what we learned R would stay the same. Therefore, changing units will not change R. R will continue to be 0.917. Last, the question says, the Rolls-Royce Ghost EWB gets 14.4 city miles and 25.5 highway miles. What effect would this point have on the correlation? So we notice that it's off to the, instead of off to the right, like the last one, it's off to the left. But it would make R closer to 1 because it actually falls in line with this linear pattern. So it's exactly the same example as we had here, but instead of the dot being off to the right along the line, this time it's off to the left along the line. So this would actually make R stronger. Nice work, guys. See you next time.